Hi, Doc. I am back with another guest. I am so excited to have Dr. Sara Ionescu, and I will not ruin her intro. I will let her do it herself. Dr. Sara, please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Toya, for having me here. I'm so excited. I am Dr. Sara Ionescu, like Dr. Toya said. I am a family medicine physician. I'm a wife. I am a mom of four, soon to be five, and I am an exercise enthusiast. And I currently create exercise content on YouTube as my primary place, but then also on Instagram and Facebook, just kind of getting people inspired to move in a simple but consistent way to be able to see mental and physical health win.
Amazing. I love it. Yes, she is a YouTuber. She's famous.
Maybe. I'm on my way to fame.
I love it. All right, so I want to start with, because we're talking about your journey in early motherhood, which you are still in the thick of. So tell me, how old are your children?
Sure. So I currently have four. Like I said, I have one that just turned seven. That's my oldest daughter. I have a 5-year-old boy, a 3-year-old boy, and then an 18-month-old boy. And I am due in, oh gosh, like 7 weeks.
Yes, at the time of this recording.
Yeah.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
you are in it.
Yeah. It is
Yes,
busy. It is joyful. We call it joyful chaos at our house because
I
that
love
is
it.
what it
Okay,
is.
wonderful. So taking it all the way back, before the 7-year-old, what ideas did you have about motherhood?
Oh my. I had so many ideas. I grew up around aunties and my mom and grandmas where the woman ran the show. Like they did it all. They did all the childcare, they did all the house management, they did everything. And so that was what I knew. And many of them were fully stay at home, like did all the childcare things. And so I thought that would be me, but I also was a physician. And so when I actually had my daughter, I realized that mom world, when you're also working as a physician, they don't quite go together in that way. It's very difficult to do both of those things in the way that you want to. And so that was kind of my rude awakening motherhood. Like, probably not going to be the same as the way you were raised by the women in your life because things are just a little different now.
Right. So when did you, in your training career journey, when did you have her?
Yeah. So I got pregnant during my third year of residency. And
Mm,
then I actually delivered, I worked for basically a month as an attending. And then I delivered her, took maternity leave, and then went back to work. So she
okay.
kind of came in the transition between training and being an attending, which was a whole, there were many transitions happening all at once. It was a
Yeah, no, I want to talk about that because I know a lot of people are there now or are planning to be, like if they're a resident and they are thinking about getting pregnant. So how was it? Like, this may seem like a very personal question, but was
okay.
she planned?
Yeah.
Like, was
Yeah.
that a planned pregnancy? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had been trying throughout my third year of residency and it just kind of happened when it happened, but it actually worked out perfectly that it was like sort of right after I completed training because I was actually ultimately really glad to be able to just like wrap up my training, be done with that phase, and then move on. Not to say that you can't have babies in residency. I had three of my resident colleagues had babies during that time. So it is absolutely doable. But for my husband and I, it was perfect timing that it ended up being after that training was completed.
Nice. So tell me about how your interview went for your attending job. Were you nervous about showing up with a belly or telling them? How did that go?
Yeah. I think initially what, because I interviewed so early, I hadn't told anybody yet. So it kind of was something we discussed sort of like throughout the interview and contract process. But they were incredibly supportive because the organization that I work for is also where I did residency. So they already knew who I was. They kind of knew my work ethic. And the organization as a whole is incredibly supportive of parents and pregnant women and breastfeeding and all of that. So it was actually a very wonderful, wonderful transition there.
Nice. Okay, I love that. So how much time did you take off?
I took 12 weeks off.
Nice.
Yeah.
And was that paid?
I think 6 weeks of it was like
Mm.
66% of my salary, and then the second 6 weeks I was allowed to take, but that second 6 weeks was unpaid.
Was unpaid. Okay.
Yeah.
So what in the transition of having this new baby was like the biggest difference than what you thought motherhood would be like from before?
Well, I think just navigating the going back to work piece and figuring out how to get to a place where I was comfortable leaving her with somebody else that wasn't my husband. Because we lived in a place where we had no family that was reasonably close that could help out. And so, we as soon as I figured out I was pregnant, I like created a care.com account, started getting it all sorted out because I knew because I was working, like, we gotta have a plan for this. Because my husband is also a physician. And yeah, so I think that was the biggest mindset hurdle for me was like, you're gonna go back to work. I knew I wanted to go back to work, but you're also gonna have to like kiss this baby goodbye and leave her with somebody for the entirety of the day. Um, so that I think, kind of going back to what I had said before, like my mom was a stay-at-home mom until I was in kindergarten, and then she worked until I got out of school. So like it was her and only her all the time. And so then leaving this baby with somebody that we hired was initially like, yikes, but it all worked out. But that was definitely probably the biggest piece of the transition.
Yeah. And when you found this person and they started, was it kind of like you were a little bit tearful? Like, how was the actual separation?
So it actually, now I have learned how to anticipate these things. At the time, I was not where I am in terms of personal development. I actually anticipated to be much, much worse than it actually was. And I think some of that had to do with the way that we onboarded our nanny, which at the time I had no idea what that meant or how to do it. It just turned out that like instinctively I did a lot of these things that I have now learned how to do with being an entrepreneur. But so basically, we did kind of an overlap for like I think it was 2 or 3 weeks where I was still home, but I had her come work her full hours. And I was kind of like there, but then it was like, I'm going to make a hair appointment. So I was leaving for a little bit, but not the entire day. And so what I did was I kind of like stretched it out over the course of those 2 to 3 weeks. So by the time it was my first day to go back to work, it was still painful, but it wasn't what it would have been if I was doing all day at home and then now we're all day at work. And the other thing I did there too that I think was really helpful is I practiced like the whole pumping business. I like packed my bag, I brought it with me so I could get used to like how to set it up because it was my first baby. Like
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. And so that helped too because I think there are so many logistics with going back to work as a physician after not working for 12 weeks, like as its own, is terrifying. But then you throw in, you have a newborn, you're a first time mom, you're trying to figure out how to pump, you're like trying not to forget the 85 parts that you need to bring with you. It's like, how am I going to keep the milk? Like all of these things. And so practicing it before it was real was incredibly helpful.
I don't think I did that. I think I
Yeah, it
just
was
like,
right. And
just
I
wing
think
it.
yeah. So I think in that instance, I was very glad that I didn't wing it because
Right.
it made that first day much less, emotionally driven.
Okay. And when you were back at work, was it hard for you just being away from her? Did you ever entertain thoughts of being like, I don't know about this work thing. I want to stay home with my baby?
At that point, very rarely. I mean, there were days here and there, like every physician has where you're just like, oh my gosh, why did I decide to do this? But really, most of the days at that job, I felt very supported. I had a wonderful medical assistant that I worked with. My nanny was also sending me pictures like every 15 minutes. And so I felt very connected to her, even though I wasn't physically present. And I had a half day off somewhere in the week. And so that also allowed for, extra time with her.
Yeah.
And so I think it was more later on that I started to have those thoughts, not so much with her.
Yeah. So tell me about the later on thoughts. When did that come?
So the later on thoughts was after I had moved and I had another job in between, and then I had another job. And the third job is the job that basically got to a point where it just felt like the benefit of going to work was not outweighed by missing time with my kids when they were small. Whereas when I did only have one and I was enjoying the job for the most part, it was it felt like it was worth it to go to work because I was developing personally, I was growing in my career. There were a lot of leadership opportunities. And then when I found myself in this other job, it just became more challenging to see the benefit of being there every day. And I found myself missing things at home. Like I felt like I was really missing out because I wasn't getting what I was looking for at work.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that because I think a lot of people have toxic jobs and difficult jobs, and it's compounded by the fact that you have these little kids. So, what was going on at work that made it so challenging?
Yeah, ultimately, I think that I ended up burned out for multiple reasons. I think I, like many physician moms do, was putting myself at the bottom of my priority list because the kids, my husband, my patients, the bosses at work, like all of these other people in my mind ranked higher than myself. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, I would be so exhausted, and then there was no time left for me to take care of myself. That I think after much thinking and much mindset work, I have been able to realize. A lot of it did stem from feeling very undervalued at my job because a lot of the feedback was that I wasn't moving quick enough. I wasn't keeping up with the schedule they wanted me to keep up with. I was spending too long in patient rooms. I would bring up ideas, meetings, and they just seemed like they weren't appreciated or they weren't being heard. And after, a few years of that, trying and trying, it just sort of felt like, I know my kids value me, even though sometimes they're small and they do things and you're like, this is mommy here. But I mean, ultimately, you understand that and like your family values you. I just felt like that value was so much more at home. And I was pouring all of this into work and it like just wasn't, it felt like it wasn't fruitful anymore. And so that kind of when I really started to think like, is this really what I want to be doing while my kids are small and the time is finite.
So, was there one particular like breaking point where you're just like, F this, I'm out. Y'all, I'll see y'all
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. So, I mean, there were like a few things that led up to a breaking point. I think one big thing was trying to be told how I should be practicing medicine, which didn't really jive with me or the way I was trained. But ultimately, it was really all around the maternity leave for my fourth baby. We negotiated about it, and I was fully ready to take a completely unpaid leave, and that was not an option for them no matter like, even if I wasn't paid at all, it was, "You can only have this number of weeks," and because of our childcare situation at the time and all of these different things, it was like, "That's not gonna work, like, I need more flexibility," and so that ultimately was the breaking point for me where it was like, "This is not gonna work."
How many weeks were they trying to give you?
So I wanted to take, well, plus depending on because my nanny was pregnant at the time, it was
Mhm.
hard to predict if there was going to be overlap. So I sort of was talking about, can we do 12 plus or minus a couple depending on what we need to do childcare wise.
Yeah.
And they were saying like, it is 12 weeks. And if you want to cut time off the end of yours because you need to go out early, that's fine, but you can only have exactly 12 weeks.
Can they dictate that? Because, like, what was the FMLA state situation?
I'm not sure I even know the answer to that. Yeah, I don't know. I know that like I had my third baby at this job also, and I took 12 weeks off and that was no problem. It seemed like it was the fact that I needed this potential flex time,
Yeah.
and that just was not going to be possible from their perspective in terms of
Interesting.
coverage. Yeah.
See, that's why you need to live in California because
Yeah.
we have protected time, not paid time, but protected time.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I was like, I don't think they can do that, but I'm very skewed because I've been in California.
I think the job protection part is 12. So
So interesting.
I'm not sure if that's where that 12 weeks comes from then.
Oh, yeah. That's so yeah, because we have 12 weeks and then an additional 12, I think. I think.
Okay.
Job protection.
Okay.
And then 8 of those is like paid. So that's an
Okay.
advertisement for California. Everybody
Yeah.
listening,
Yes.
have
Yeah.
babies in California.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So I know it made sense, right, for you to quit this job, but what feelings did you have around quitting and then deciding to not immediately look for another job once you had recovered from the baby?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many. I was terrified. I was terrified to quit. Um, I was terrified for so many reasons because I thought, what if I quit and never go back and I, in quotation marks, throw away the 10 years that I spent in med school and residency, and not to mention all the money and loans that I have because of it. Um, I also had a little bit of fear, not initially, I did after I got home, but I sort of had this fear of like, what am I going to do? Like, am I a mom and I have no other identity? There was some of that too, which was like this double edged sword of being fearful of that, but then also feeling guilty that I had those feelings because it was like, why wouldn't I be fully complete just being at home? So that was another big mindset thing for me. I think I also felt like I was a weak physician because I couldn't live up to the standards that they wanted. And so it was just like all these other people are out there. They're seeing all the patients they're supposed to be seeing. They're meeting all the criteria. They're doing all the things. They're taking a 6-week maternity leave and back at it. And I wasn't doing any of those things. And so I looked at myself as lesser than those other docs that were able to do all of that.
And were those docs that you were comparing yourself to, like, people that you knew?
Yeah, I mean, not in an acquaintance friendship kind of way. They were just people that were like in the department. And some of them were really not even some of them were not even people at the same organization, just other people that I knew that were physicians in a similar phase of life or a similar distance from training that were like in my view, were like out there killing it, seeing all the patients, super efficient, and I just wasn't that. And so that made me look at myself as less than these other docs.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that because it's a very common thing to hear, "Oh, you're not fast enough. You're taking too long." Because we know that it's just like a patient mill, and it's not
Right.
us that want it to be that way, even though patients think it's us. But I think it's a very common thing to have to deal with at work and a very common feeling of, well, I just suck as a physician and that's why.
Right.
So I'm very sorry that you had to go through that. When you were at home with the four of them, like how was it being home and not knowing if you were going to go back and having made that decision?
Initially, it was very scary, like I said, because I spent my whole life with making a decision and working towards that decision. And then to make a decision that was left open ended was very scary because there was no plan. There was no Like, this is the job I will get. This is when I will go back. And I actually found it incredibly challenging to think about the future because I had spent so many years driven toward one goal. And so I really forgot how to think about what I want, what I'm passionate about, what drives me because I made a decision when I was whatever, like 18 years old and like lived that for years. And so it's like I rarely thought, I mean, of course you think about like, do I want to have this for dinner or that for dinner? But like in the scheme of your life, like huge decisions in your life,
Yeah.
I forgot how to do it. Like I forgot how to do
Yeah.
it. And so that initial period, of course, like once I had the baby and then you're in the new, like all of that was a whirlwind. But once we kind of got it down, figured out how to be a family of six, when I actually sat down, it was like, how do I figure out what the next step is? Like, I don't know. That was like the first, I just felt very confused, I think, is what it
Yeah.
was. And I felt incredibly grateful to be able to be home. Like, that was such a wonderful, like, maternity leave because it didn't have an end. So it wasn't like the ones before where I would literally be thinking like 4 weeks to go, 3 weeks to go. There was always a
Yeah.
countdown. And this one, it was like, this is awesome. Like stress level was so low and it felt like luxurious. Like there were times where I felt guilty that I was able to do that. Like that my husband was going to work and I was able to do that. So that piece of it was amazing.
So how were y'all managing? Because four just sounds like so much. So for us, we wanted three initially until we had one, and then we were
Yeah.
like, "Mm, maybe not." But then I always thought that four just sounded like so much. So you described it as luxurious
Yeah.
and all of these adjectives. Like how
So
was it managing? And because they're all very small. So
yeah.
tell me a little bit about that.
So I think a couple of things. One is we did still have our nanny.
Right.
So she ended up having a baby and she was bringing him to our house, which of course changed a lot of things, but there was still another adult present. So it wasn't like when my husband was at work, it was me all day, every day with four kids. So it's kind of funny. It's the opposite of you. Like we always said we would have two. And then we had one and we were like, okay. And then we had two and we were like, yeah, we're going to keep going. Like we're just going to keep going. And part of it was, and I think probably everybody listening, I fear saying this because I've said this before and people get really sometimes a little prickly about it, but so our kids are wonderful, amazing sleepers, like knock on wood. And so I don't think we would have this many if they weren't because I thrive on a certain amount of sleep and because they somehow figure it out, like by no, I don't know what I'm doing that's helping them, but somehow they all have been wonderful sleepers. And obviously, if you're awake multiple times a night, like I feel like that's a deterrent to having more and more. But for us, that was not the case. And so I think that was part of it too. I think that contributed because, of course, when you're well rested, it's easier to enjoy the day because I think when mom is less stressed and calm, the entire household is
Yeah.
less stressed and calm. And I can see, I mean, even till today, like if I am stressed about whatever, even if it's unrelated to them, it pervades everybody.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece of it in terms of like it being luxurious and all that, we from the beginning, we have really fostered a teamwork component to our kids. And so like even when we had our second, I was having my daughter, like she was there. She was getting things for me when I was breastfeeding. She was helping with getting diapers and wipes. And so we really tried to cultivate the like being a helper, which of course, as she got older and we had more, like she became more and more helpful. And then her little brothers also wanted to be helpful. And so we kind of have this whole, we call it the crew. We're like the Ionescu crew because they just help out where, of course, they're toddlers, they throw tantrums, they're on the floor crying. But like a lot of times they'll see me struggling and they will come and say, "Mommy,
Mhm.
what can I do? Like, what should I go get? How can I help you?" And so that I think also wonderful too and helps because they're helping out.
That's amazing. I love that. And I want to ask, so you did not sleep train? They just slept?
No, yeah. Like Penel
That's
so my oldest, I mean, she was like 4 or 5 weeks old and would sleep from 9 p.m. I remember the first time she did it, I woke up, I was like, "Oh my god." It was like 5 a.m. I jumped out of bed to my husband, I was like shaking the bassinet. He was like, "She's fine." Like, I checked on her 3 my husband got up and checked. And then, like, from then on, it was like, "What?" And I
Mhm.
remember I took her to one of her checkups, and the doctor was like, "This is the kind of baby you need to be really careful because this is where you end up with, like, 8 or 9 children." Because
That is
they're
hilarious.
they're like, she was like, "Please just think about how many you want, like, let's have a plan here." Yeah, I did not sleep train that. They just and my husband and I are both like, we don't knock on wood, knock on my head, knock on wood. We don't have any sleep troubles, and so I don't know if that in our
That's
anyway.
amazing.
Yeah.
I might have had 4 too. I mean, my kids were sleepers, but I was so paranoid about it that I was very, like, anal about their sleep. So I had a
Okay.
snooze, every nap was in the snooze. There was, like,
Okay.
no chest naps, no can't like, everything revolved around the fact that I
Yeah.
knew that I needed this child to sleep, and
Okay.
it needed to happen this time. But that is amazing. Yeah, okay, that
Yeah.
explains that.
I was also, like, very naive about it, and I just kind of was, like, willy-nilly. Like, I just
Right.
kind of let her do what she want. Like, she would nap in the carrier on me,
Yeah,
or she would like, we didn't really have a routine, and so because it worked for her to do that,
yeah,
that's what I did with the other one, because sometimes I think I was able to be calm about it because I wasn't, like, trying
yeah,
to make it work,
yeah, yeah,
and so I think that even as a newborn, I feel like they could tell if I was stressed or not because there were stressful periods with trying to breastfeed, and you could
yeah,
see her getting stressed, whereas the sleep part was a low stress kind of
yeah.
thing.
That is a sentence I have never heard. That's amazing. The sleep was low stress.
Yeah, knock on
All right,
wood.
right. Yes, because you do have another one on the way. So,
Exactly.
but
Keep us
this
or
good,
sleep. Yeah,
good vibes only. It's gonna be fine. Gonna be
exactly.
fine. So, how did you get from, okay, you're home with the four, not sure if you're gonna go back. Now you're an entrepreneur. You're a YouTuber. You're doing all these things. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah. So my husband heard a podcast with Dr. Una, who is a business mentor, business coach, has a business school. And when he heard her on this podcast, he was like, "You have to, like, you need to do this. This is what is going to help you figure out where you're going." And at that point, I had gotten to a point where, like I said before,
Yeah,
I couldn't even figure out how to think about what I wanted to do. And so we got her book, read her book, ended up signing up for the school, started figuring out where some of my passions are, how to further explore that, and then just got myself out there. And I'm an exercise enthusiast. So that area I was always passionate about with my patients, with friends. Like, I just always was talking about, hey, like, let's go move, let's do this, and encouraging patients to do that. And so it kind of came full circle when I was starting to think about, like, if I got on social media, because I was literally nowhere on social media, if I got on there, like, what would I even talk about? And I remember she said, like, "What's something that you do every single day that you're passionate about?" And it was like, "Well, take care of my kids, but exercise." And so I just, like, started doing it, and after I got over the initial, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm posting my face in a video on social media," I started to realize, "Wow, this is actually really fun," and I feel like what I'm saying, is providing value and will help people that may have some of the, like, mindset barriers that I had to getting back to exercise, or just making it feel really complicated when it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. So, what exactly did Dr. Una talk about that made your husband say, this is what you need? Because, I hear family medicine doctor, mom of four, and then a business coach. Like, fill in the gaps. Like, how did
Yeah.
he was like, yes,
So
this is what you need?
I think it was on the Business of Surgery, because he's a surgeon. It was on the Business of Surgery podcast that she was on. And I really think it was just her talking about her method of time freedom and financial freedom, and just that there were alternatives to being an employed physician in a large organization. Because with my medical school and residency and everything I had done thus far, I really had not seen I'd seen maybe like one example of a family medicine doc that had a micro practice in another. But aside from that, it was like you got a job with a large organization and you were employed and you had to get vacations approved. You had to stick to the schedule that, it was just that. And I always said, even with that first job that I, felt well supported, I just always felt like there has to be something else. Like I just want to do more and I don't know what it is. And so I think she talked about that, like how there were people in school that have these thoughts of like, I want more, but I don't know what it is. I want to be more in control of my life and of my work. And I think that's where he sort of was like, that would be so helpful for you because I had talked to him many times about how I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to go back to an employed large organization position.
That's amazing that, first of all, that you'll have that relationship where you talk about those things and he would hear that and be like, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
And then support you to be able to do that. So speaking of your husband, with all of these changes, him being a physician as well, 4 kids, like how have you all been able to like maintain your relationship and, where does it land in all of this big family life that you have?
Yeah. I think, of course, like anyone that, you get married and then you have kids, your relationship morphs and changes and adjusts, accordingly. I think that for us, one, and I know that sometimes I feel like dual physician marriages can be challenging, but for us, it was incredibly helpful because we knew what the other one was going through. And so I think, especially from the female mom side being at home, like I understood what was happening with him being a surgeon. And so when he got stuck in the OR or when he got stuck at work, it was like there was no bitterness about that because I knew he had no control over that. So I think that is one thing. I think another thing is even though things like, physically leaving the house to go do things together alone, like me and him without the kids, can be challenging. We sort of morphed it into just doing things after the kids go to bed in the house. So it was basically like a date night, but not leaving the house.
Right.
And like some of it is things that maybe feel silly to some people, but we love doing jigsaw puzzles. And so like we would have a few minutes, a few nights a week where we would do that. And of course, it's not hours and hours. Like we understand that. I think the other thing is, like I said, we as a family are very focused on teamwork. And so that I think really helps too, because even though he is working sometimes up to 80 hours a week, like he still is pitching in at home and teaching the kids like they need to pitch in. And so that I think just helps things move more efficiently. And then we have more time to do things either as a family or maybe the kids are going to do some play in the playroom and me and him are going to, do something else.
Yeah. That got my heart there with the puzzle. I love a good puzzle. I love a good
You're puzzle
puzzle.
lady. I know. You
Yeah,
love puzzles here.
I love it. So I think that's really important to talk about is that it doesn't have to be this elaborate date night
Right.
where you dress up and go out. It could be something as simple as doing a puzzle full of it. And if you don't like puzzles, if you're laughing at us
Right.
right now because we're puzzle people, whatever.
But
But
it can be yeah, it can be whatever you got,
yeah.
like, whatever hobbies you have. One that we've started so we love to exercise together in med school, and then once we got married and had babies, it was like, yeah, that doesn't exist anymore, like, we can't do that, but recently, in the last few months, we kind of started doing that again, and it was like, "Oh, yeah, like, this is something that we used to really enjoy where we would, exercise together," and so it was just a reminder, like, it doesn't have to be the traditional you're going to dinner or you're drinking,
Yeah.
you're having a glass of wine, like can be other things that you both enjoy that you do together and that help maintain and cultivate that relationship.
Let me let me just get one thing straight here. Y'all like to exercise that
Yeah.
much?
Yes,
I
you go.
cannot relate.
You will. It's so good, Dr. Toya.
Oh my God. Why how did you get so into exercise? I'm just so anti. I like the results. I
Yeah.
love my body when it's fit, but
Yeah.
the getting there is a problem.
Yeah. So I think I just over the years have realized how much more positive and peaceful I feel when I exercise. I started exercising because I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to feel more physically fit. I wanted to have energy. Like it was more of the physical benefit. But now, especially with the kids, like if we have a weekend where I don't exercise versus I do, like Saturday I don't and Sunday I do, it is like it's wild the difference. Like Saturday where I didn't exercise, I'm a lot more likely to be short tempered. I'm raising my voice. I'm like, tantrums are bananas. But on the days where I do, everything is just like smoother, calmer. It doesn't mean that things don't happen. My tolerance level for it is so much more. And so that kind of stuff is what, on the days where I really don't want to do it, I'm like, wait, but if I do it, the day is going to go so much better. And so then I do it.
I don't know, man.
I'm gonna get you
I
there. I'm gonna get you there.
I trying. I'm trying. I'm really trying. Okay. So you like to exercise. That's
Yes.
fine, I guess. So when you started, doing the YouTube channel and getting this transition back into something that was outside of this identity as a stay-at-home mom. Tell me about that journey and what was your thinking about going back to medicine, like navigating now starting this new venture, and then you still have these 4 kids.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's complicated. I think I have been experimenting with different things so that I'm not just, like, making a decision without having data. And so I signed a contract. I'm getting credentialed to start doing some as needed virtual family medicine stuff, just kind of a few hours here and there to one, maintain my skills, but two, to kind of clarify for myself if practicing clinically is something that I want to do, moving forward, or if I'm going to kind of pivot away from that and really focus on this exercise or whatever business
Hmm.
situation this may, morph into. I think that throughout this process, with the social media stuff, um, I have become significantly more confident in myself, especially with the making videos. So, like I said, I was nowhere on social media. And I literally was like, okay, here we go. Create an Instagram account from scratch, like had never been on Instagram and like ramp up my Facebook profile, stuff that I was terrified to do in the past. And with doing it, so I've done videos every single day now for months and I think just that action of doing it every single day has made me so much more confident in myself as a human. Because I've practiced it, I feel much more comfortable talking about things. I feel confident that I can provide people value and inspire them and encourage them. which I never thought was possible before.
Yeah. So tell me about the per diem job. What is it about that that's going to kind of help you decide about medicine versus doing something else?
Yeah. So I think my idea with that was one, because it's PRN, I can control how much I work and when I work, which was a big part of why I knew I didn't want to go back to being an employed physician because with how many kids we have, even if we have childcare, inevitably, like it's really difficult to have for both of us to have a set schedule and not be more flexible. So I knew I wanted something where I could control that myself. The other piece is I just had fears of making the decision to leave clinical completely without trying it again in a different situation. Because that last job I had was sort of like, I just felt like it was hard for me to tell if I fell out of love with being a doctor or if it was just the situation that I was. And so that's why when I started to think about like, do I want to practice as a physician still? I sort of felt like I needed to try it again in a different scenario to really clarify that for my mind.
Yeah. And I think that's important for a lot of people because a lot of people in that situation, that's what happened to me, right? Like I burnt out and I was like, I'm never going back to the office. I was like, is it because I don't like the office or because I didn't like my office? Don't
Right.
actually know.
Right.
And that was part of the reason that I was going to start practice of my own. And then I was like, I actually don't like the office. So that was,
Yeah.
how I made that decision. You've had a lot of transitions, a lot of things that you had to work through. What would you say helped you, like through all of those ups and downs and trying to figure these things out?
Yeah. So I really think it was investing in myself in the form of coaching. So with Dr. Una, like doing the business coach thing, and then I coach with you. And so I think that, I made the decision to do that because after I signed up for the business school and started coaching with Dr. Una, and I saw how much the coaching accelerate the change in yourself, like the personal development and figuring out how to do these things. Honestly, like, before I did any of it, it was like, "What? Like, what why do you need?" I don't understand. Like, I understand that you have a coach when you're an athlete, but, like,
Right.
why do you need a coach? And for me, like, coaching with you and coaching with Dr. Una, like, I have seen how it just accelerates the process, and I think eventually I would have gotten where I am today, but I really think that it would have been years from now. And I think
Years.
yeah. And I mean really years. I think where I was mindset wise when I made the decision to join the business school, like I think about that person it is like a completely different person. Like obviously I'm the same, but the version of myself that I was is wildly, wildly different. And I think when I met you as part of the business school and learned about what you did and we chatted, it was like, okay, I think that I need even more help to get on this path of like figuring out what my values are, what my passions are, what do I actually want to do in this life? And is there something that is going to be worth time away from my kids? And how do I figure out what that is? And I think, you know, coaching with you has allowed me to see myself in a different light because I had so much drama around, especially that last job that I had. And I could not step away and see who I was from the outside. And that's where I think, you helped me do that. You facilitated that process. And it was like, whoa, 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 this is what I'm seeing. Like, have you ever thought about that? And then you point out all these other things that have happened in my life. And it's like, no, here's the person that you actually are what your brain is telling you is not the correct story. It's like this negative pretend story that you made up. And this is what the data actually shows. And so now my brain is able to, obviously it's always a work in progress, but like
Right.
I find that my mind is much better able to do that. Like I can do it myself more. Of course, there's days where it doesn't happen, but I am able to recognize, like, okay, this is what's happening. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to look from the outside, like, okay, remember who you are. You're strong. You're that, all these things. And it's like, okay, which I could never do before all of this coaching.
I was giggling because hearing you describe how I coach you is hilarious.
I mean, it's been wrong. I think it's accurate.
It was accurate, but it's just I don't typically hear that. So it was just funny to hear how you interpret how I sound. So it was actually kind of funny.
Oh,
But I wanted to go back to something you said because one thing you didn't mention, and it's so interesting that you didn't mention it, is that you were an elite athlete before.
yeah. Well, a competitive
So
athlete, but
you that's elite,
I
is
was,
it
I
not?
don't know. I don't know if I was elite.
It was competitive. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
You're a competitive athlete, right? And so from that perspective, you like, why do you need a coach? I'm interested for somebody who has been coached at a
Level.
competitive level.
Yeah.
Like, tell me a little bit more about your perception of coaching in this sense.
Yeah. So I guess it's just because, like, growing up and society-wise, like, you always think of having coaches,
Yeah.
which when you think about, like, business people have it makes sense that you have coaches for things because they help you. They they're not they're not doing it for you, but they're, like, guiding you. They're your
Right.
guide while you do the work, and so it makes perfect sense that everybody should have a coach. But I think until you either talk to somebody, like, really honestly that's done it, or you do it yourself, you, like, don't get it. And I think
Yeah.
one during one of our things, I said to you, like, "Now I understand why everybody that has been coached often wants to be a coach," because you see, like, how you can change people's lives, like, quite literally, because my life has been changed because of coaching with you and being part of the business school, which I never thought was possible. I just thought, "Oh, I'm gonna do this and, like, whatever, we'll see what happens." But now it's like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is insane." And I think some of it is, that the mindset thing of, like, we trained to be physicians. And so then if you make this decision to be a coach, like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Did I need to go to school for all these years to do this? And honestly, I think that I probably am a coach because I that was my passion with patients. Like, I was really coaching them a lot of the time. But I think that a lot of physicians have this hang up with, you poured blood, sweat, and tears into your schooling and into what we do, but that's part of your journey. And that's what would make you who you need to be to coach the people that you're going to coach. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't coach me if you didn't have the path that you had. And I think that's the whole idea with the coaching thing. And yeah, I was like not a part of that world. I had no idea that it existed until my husband came home and was like, "This is a thing." It was like, "What?" And then once I joined the business school and started talking to all these people, it was like, "Oh my gosh, like, you can be a doctor, but you can be all these other things too." Like, it's wild. And it's
I
wild.
Every time you tell that story, I'm just like, Baldwin is my favorite person ever because for him to be
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead and sign up. And for you as well to not really know what you wanted to do and take that leap, that's a big deal. Y'all are some very interesting people, interesting in a good way, some very big, massive actions. And I think that's one of the things that I saw immediately when we started coaching, but had been lost in the story of burnout, because that's what it is,
Yeah.
right? It's just like burnout strips you of the reality of your awesomeness. and you're just left with the shell of I suck. I can't see any patients. So I'm very, very glad that you reached out because it was a recommendation that somebody said that you talked to me. And, all those things were decisions that you made. And it was choosing you and choosing yourself. And I think that's the most important part of your story is that all of these leaps were because you were choosing yourself, even though you love your family and are dedicated to them.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was framing it as, you know, I'm investing in myself because at first I really struggled with the coaching thing. It was like, oh, am I just paying money to get better? Whatever it is. But it's like, yeah, I am because I want to invest in myself and in my future. And that is really important to me. And I have learned over the last few years, like that is a really important value for me is growth as a human. And like I said before, I feel like I'm a different version of myself, but I also feel like coaching has sort of like brought me back to life, if that makes sense. Like the person that I was before was just kind of like this shell, exactly how you said it. And so coaching has not only brought that back, but like up leveled it even more. And that's why hands down, time and time again, I would absolutely make these decisions again. Because even if, and I know this is not going to happen, but like, even if this business goes nowhere, like, no, it's going places. But even if it didn't, I would still do it again. I would still do it. Well,
The
like, I
interview is over. I love it.
still, even if it was nothing, I would still do this all again because regardless of that career part of it, like I am a more present mom, I'm a more present wife, I'm able to enjoy my life in a way that I never could before. Before I was fixated on all the negative things and all the things I didn't like. And now I'm just able to enjoy the journey that is life. And so, yeah, I would do it all again. But don't
Amazing.
worry, the business is going to be real.
So tell the listeners, tell them about this business, please. Tell them about your YouTube channel.
Okay, so my YouTube channel is all about moving. It's just getting moving, and it's about things being simple, so it can be done anywhere, anytime. You could be at work, you could be at home. You can do, minutes and minutes. You can break it down and do a few things. It's like for all phases of really probably motherhood, I would say. Like, I'm pregnant. I have a lot of stuff that's good for pregnancy, postpartum, busy moms. And, I love what you always say, which is you're postpartum forever, right? Like, once you've had a baby, you're always postpartum. So it's not if you're 6 months postpartum, this doesn't apply. No, it absolutely does. And if you have, say, abdominal separation, like a diastasis recti, and you're 5 years postpartum, guess what? You can still do this stuff and heal it. You don't have to heal it immediately after birth. So that, and then there's a lot of like exercise mindset, which I know sounds kind of wacky, but I think for me, like you said, coming from being a competitive athlete, a lot of the barriers to being consistent with my movement had to do with mindset, like shifts in mindset, redefining what exercise is, how do I exercise? Because exercising when you're in college and your only responsibility is going to class versus when you're a wife and you have 4 little kids. I mean, you're different. Your life is different. And so you can't have the same definition of exercise. And when I was able to make that realization, it like opened up the game for exercise consistency. And I mean, I could talk about that forever, but anyway, so that's the gist of my channel.
And I love that because you spoke to my heart. It is the reason that I am not consistent. And it's just like I define exercise a certain way because I know how to exercise. I know how to get fit. I know how to lose weight. I've done it many times before. And it looks like an hour
Right.
hit workout, drenched in sweat, like
Yeah.
muscles glistening, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these things. But that is not happening right now.
Right.
It is
Right.
not. I'm tired. I have these two children who actually have been screaming during the last half of this interview. I don't know if you heard it or not, but it's the exercise is not happening like that. And in my mind, if I don't do that type of exercise, whatever else I do is not worth it. And I think a lot of moms feel that way. And just people in general who aren't athletes and who aren't used to exercising is like exercise looks this one way, especially if I have a goal of this type of body or
Right.
whatever. So it's just like I just end up doing nothing. And that's what I love about your stuff, even though still haven't been consistent. When when I did it, it just felt great and it was so short. It was quick, it was simple, and I felt it. It wasn't like a waste of time.
Right.
So it really is just reframing your mind about what this thing is, what getting your body moving is. And in my spurts, for me, getting outside and walking is a win. And it's something that I can do with my kids. We get a little bit of extra time to spend together and they love it. Like when I bring my daughter back in the stroller, she's crying because she's
Yeah,
like,
she wants to go.
she wants to
Keep
go
going,
back,
keep going.
you know? But
But
it's like that movement was movement that helped me. I was able to push her around. I got outside, which helps my circadian rhythm because unlike you, I actually have sleep problems. So it's just the movement, any way that it looks is helpful. So I really love that that is your mission, that is what you focus on because it is what I need, it is what a lot of other moms need. So I just absolutely love what you are doing. So tell people where they can find all of this amazingness.
yeah. So my YouTube channel is just Dr. Sara Ionescu. It's DrSaraIonescu. And that's my handle everywhere. So Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, that's where I'm posting stuff. I also have a website that's drsaraionescu.com where you can sign up for my free newsletter.
Perfect. I love it. And definitely check out her YouTube channel. The exercises are great. You get your mind right. Everything's is going to be great. It's going to be great.
Yeah. And they're going to
Mhm.
keep coming. So
Yes.
we'll see. There's probably going to be a tiny baby in some videos in the future. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, so definitely follow her and do all those things. Dr. Sarah, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your amazing journey with our audience. Any last words for the doc that's listening?
I would say just remember to take care of yourself, which sounds so simple and cliche, but it's so easy for us as everybody listening, a physician mom, it's so easy to not do it. And then you end up in a situation like I was in. So just make sure you take that time to take care of yourself. Self care is not selfish. Don't feel guilty about it. You have to take care of you to be able to pour out to take care of all of these other humans that you take care of husbands, spouses, kids, patients, everybody.
That
And movement is very helpful as part of
nice little plug at the end
oh,
there.
my drop.
All right, Doc. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. It has been a pleasure. And for the doc that is listening, be sure to share this podcast with another physician mom, one who needs to get a little bit of inspiration, who needs to get out moving. You never know who is struggling out there, who just needs a little pick me up and can benefit from Dr. Sarah's channel or can benefit from everything that we talk about here on Stethoscopes and Strollers, where it is my mission for you to feel a little more seen and a lot less alone. And that's why I'm bringing on all of these wonderful guests to share their stories, both in it and the people who have gone through it already. It's just a little bit better to know that other people are going through similar things. So many of our stories are so similar. And like Dr. Sarah said, everything that you have been through is directing you to where you are going to be, to that dream life that you want to build. And anybody who is a physician mom in these early years and just needs guidance getting to that dream life, definitely sign up for a free coaching session. It will totally be worth it. And like Dr. Sarah said, it will just get you there so much faster, so much more efficiency, and getting you to that happy, wonderful dream life that you have in the future. So I will see you on the next episode of Stethoscopes and Strollers. Bye.
Bye.